It's like the city comes out to play and it goes just outside in its own park, but it's like the whole of the city goes over the bridge and just spends a good time together.
One of the things we were very keen on was making it free.
This is our manifesto. Who enjoys free festivals more than anybody else, eh? Stop! Right!
We literally did everything for free. Johnny Smith, who was one of the original coordinators, someone said to him, wouldn't it be great to have inflatables? And he went to research it and found that inflatables were going to cost 60 quid or something to hire for the weekend, and they wanted insurance certificates to be written. So he made his own. He just got a load of cheap plastic sheeting and he got a soldering iron and bent a little knurled wheel to it, and he was seaming these sheets. And then he got a couple of old washing machines, took the motors out of them and stuck rotors on the end of the motors, put them into a little passageway, and instantly we had inflatables. They were probably quite dangerous, but they worked. They had kids all over them. We had a catering division doing food at the festival to raise money. There was a whole bunch of us involved in it, and it was very cheap, sort of chapatis and rice and lentil stews, and we wanted to cook chapatis on site. We didn't know how to do it, so someone came back with a one-way sign. I don't know where they got it, a street sign. That was put over a fire, a wooden, we had a fire burning there, and we cooked chapatis on top of it all weekend. Worked very well. People loved it, and everyone felt it was a really worthwhile thing. We got terrific feedback afterwards, and the people that really appreciated it were the performers.
All sorts of cool stuff going on. I remember as you went over the hills you could hear the music in the distance, and as the wind caught it, it kind of phased, and this was without drugs, this was just walking into it, and it had this kind of great, really exciting kind of vibe. I always played in some form or another, either the jazz tent or on one of the stages or something, in one of the bands I was involved with. And sometimes I played 2 or 3 times with different bands. It was great, and I really, really look forward to it, and totally buzzed on it.
Our first year was 1989, I think.
You set your guitar on fire.
Yeah, so my guitar got set on fire, but Sam, our keyboard player, who always likes doing things to the fullest possible degree, decided to set himself on fire. So he covered himself with silver foil.
Like baking foil, whatever, cooking foil.
Yeah.
And then squirted himself with lighter fluid, and kind of set himself on fire.
And dived off the stage, much to the surprise of the people sat having a picnic right in front of us. We had this van we just bought, hadn't we? And we drove up there with loads of people standing on the top with various signs.
Rather inappropriate size. Gosh, it's slightly cringeworthy, but we wrote take drugs on one and fuck on the other, and then the police stopped us. We kind of had them on top of our van as we were driving it onto the site, and the police stopped us.
They said you can't. They said you can't come on stage with those. You can't come onto the festival with those signs. I'm afraid you just got to take them down. So we said, yeah, we'll change them. Yeah. So it's take rugs and duck, which is a much better slogan anyway.
So the naked thing had already kind of happened, and Sean said, well, let's do it again as a going away stunt.
But he said the thing is, we're not allowed just to take our clothes off like for the last song as a sort of gimmick thing. We have to just go on naked, do the entire gig naked, but just naked, and then and I think the idea was everyone take their clothes off as well. Let's everyone in the entire festival get naked. Sam, the keyboard player, he didn't like being sort of hidden behind his keyboard. So he came out and did some handstands.
Yes.
He was walking on his hands.
He was kind of doing cartwheels and stuff, yeah.
Just to make sure everyone knew that he was definitely naked.
Yeah.
We had a few sort of travelling street theatre groups who performed. Fort Beard Fantasy, Crystal Theatre, one or two others whose names have disappeared.
Come on! Let's see the ball and have a good time.
The theatre groups that were involved in the festival were really right there in the audience and on the stage and everywhere else, and adding to the magic of it.
Don't stand up front here, otherwise I'm gonna shoot this one!
I know Dave actually had a brain operation. They built this sort of fake head for him, and he was walking amongst the crowds and actually sat him down and a group of people and started operating on his brain and opened his head up and took the parts out there and put the radio controller there. They were controlling him. So they are actually taking him around the crowds there, as a sort of automaton or robot.
One of the contentious things was the club stage. One of the first years I was volunteering was when we first had the dance tent as it was then. The police especially didn't like the way that it was in an enclosed venue, and we were given an ultimatum. They had to go, but then we sneaked it into other areas. So we put it on the stages. We changed what used to be the jazz stage and called it the bigger top, because the tent went from a big top to a big outdoor stage, and that was more dance music orientated and a sort of slightly different programming feel.
Its national reputation was very much for a long time it was known as the biggest free festival in Europe.
The 70s was really when saw the development of the festival movement in this country, and it kind of started out and established itself. And Ashton Court played quite an important part in that, as being something, it was known around the country.
I worked at Radio Bristol on a programme called Loaded, which was an independent music programme on a Sunday night, probably with an audience of about 5. But it was good fun, it was great fun to do. And every year, the actual programme producer, Ali Grant, always went on holiday when it was Ashton Court Festival, so I got left doing it. And so I never planned anything, and myself and a couple of others used to go up there with the radio car and just make a show up as we went along. And one of our favourites in those days, Bristol bands like the Moonflowers and Me and the whole kind of pop god group, as it were, they kind of invaded Ashton Court one year and set up their own stage, and then kept coming back. And we had a really good relationship with them, and they were rather anarchic. And one year, they locked me inside the radio car during our broadcast and wouldn't actually let me out until I'd sung Kumbaya live on air.
Looking at the history of the festival, you'd have to say the way Bristol City Council's attitude vacillated from indifference to panic to support to outright hostility over the decades. That's the weirdest thing about it. On the one hand, they didn't want people doing things outside their control. On the other hand, it was a major cultural event that they could take credit for. They were torn between those two positions, obviously.
So Chris Turner, who's the coordinator of the Bristol Community Festival, often known as the Ashton Court Festival, really, because it's held there, isn't it? And has been held there since 1974, I gather, Ross. Welcome to you.
Hello. Yes, indeed. The festival was started in 1974 by a group of Bristolians, and then in 1981 was the last year for 2 years, because we had a lot of trouble with outsiders coming down and wanting to camp and one thing and another. So the event closed for 2 years, and then it was started again in 1983 as a much more broad-based event, a community event, rather than just aimed at young people.
Front page of the Evening Post, it said, Drugs and Nudism Festival is banned, and we were really pleased about that. We were really quite proud of achieving that status.
Drugs and Nudity Festival is banned. We managed to grab a drugs and nudity festival. Sounds like fun, doesn't it?
It looked as though we had lost Ashton Court Festival for good. And it was only with a really concerted effort the following year, bringing together a whole bunch of other organisations, including WOMAD, Venue Magazine. A really concerted effort was made to put the festival back, and we were able to do it by doing a one-day festival for Ashton Court and a one-day festival for WOMAD, put them on at the same weekend. Subsequent to that, the future of the festival was assured.
The move was caused because of foot and mouth disease, but that's just a rumour because hardly any of the organisers had foot and mouth disease.
It seemed more like a sort of agricultural fair or something from the distance than the good old Ashton Court as we knew it. And I mean, personally speaking, I heaved quite a big sigh of relief when it went back to Ashton Court, I have to admit.
City councils, especially in the 90s, they sort of like the fluffy balloon fiesta, harbour festival type events. We were just a load of dirty, scummy hippies up on the hill making a racket. And they sort of supported us in a way, but not financially in any way. The event never got any funding from anyone. It was always a struggle to get the event happening. When the Licensing Act changed, we used to pay £1,000 for a licence. It then went overnight to £30,000 because you have to pay based on the amount of people coming to the event. So you were instantly £29,000 worse off than you were the year before. So we initially just started asking people to pay a suggested donation of £1, which worked quite well. And it went well up to the year that we went to Hengrove, where we lost an awful lot of money. After that, we had to borrow some money from the council anyway, just to pay off our debts. So we realised the only way to survive was to bite the corporate bullet. We went with Orange because they were a local company. They employed a lot of people. They paid the first year for all of their employees to come to the event. Without them, it would have finished 5-6 years before it did.
I think towards the end they began to lose the plot a bit, to be honest. In 2006 they introduced the VIP area, which, given all the criticism that there was, people were saying it's a creeping hand of corporatism and all the rest of it, it was a PR disaster that they should introduce this alleged VIP area.
When you are relying upon a Great British outdoor summer weather every year for more than 30 years, there are definitely going to be some years where there is bad luck with the weather, and obviously that's had its part to play in the long story of the festival.
So on Saturday it more or less worked, although we'd had a really wet build, and I think we only had one dry day, which was the one day we could get all the heavy equipment in, things like porta cannons and things like that, which are really, they're not heavy, but they're difficult to get on the grass. So Saturday night it finished, had a drink, and it started raining, and I woke up in the morning and it was still raining, and something like 2 inches of rain had fallen.
Yeah, I remember getting a call on the Sunday morning that it wasn't going to go ahead. So I wandered up to the site to have a look around, and it was just there's some very disconsolate people around, people who'd, I think I'm right remembering that some of the production people had had 4 hours sleep in 3 nights ahead of this to try and get it on, because it was a real last minute dash. And then, the site it had just churned up with this appalling rain, and I don't think people quite knew what to do.
Moving from that well-drained, perfect site to a swamp, basically, in the final year was madness. And I think that inevitably the festival couldn't go ahead.
So we had to pull it, and it was horrendous.
After we heard that Ashton Court Festival had sadly gone bankrupt, there was a message that went out all over the internet calling everyone together to meet at this pub. I was a previous volunteer. I used to create short films animations in one of the tents, and there were other people that had done the bucket shaking and people that just used to go to the festival and loved it. And we all felt really strongly that it was something that Bristol really needed and deserved, and was such a fantastic part of the calendar. We redesigned the festival, and because we had to start from scratch, we had no funding, no investors, anything like that. We had to raise every penny, so we were putting on fundraisers weekly in Mr. Wolf's, we were doing them in Joe Public's, we were sort of scrounging everything we could together and completely doing it voluntary. And we started off small by starting off in the amphitheatre down in Bristol Harbside. And we put it on in the Bristol Amphitheatre for 4 years before we were finally ready to make that jump back to the spiritual home of Ashton Court.
The 2 years out there were absolutely crazy, and just a gargantuan effort from all of the hundreds of volunteers and staff that were involved. There were blood, sweat and lots of tears, but standing at the top of the hill watching 20,000 people sing along to De La Soul was one of the best moments of my entire life.
So what we were noticing is that it was really hard for people to get that first sort of foot in the door and get that first entry-level experience into the festival world. It's all about who you know, not what you know. So we offer people those opportunities. We gave people a chance and put them in entry-level and really sort of gave them real responsibilities, real roles, and trained them up, and then helped them go on to work at top festivals all around the country. And that's been really rewarding for us to see people start off and sort of grow through the organisation and go on to do amazing things.
It's been an absolute pleasure to work with all of the volunteers, all of my colleagues, and everyone else that's been involved. It has been one of the best things I've ever done. I've made some of the greatest friends that I will ever have, and it's been just an amazing way to get experience in the festival and events industry. I've got some incredible opportunities from it that I never ever would have had without Brisfest. So I will be forever grateful for my involvement and for the organisation and what it's done for me.
Brisfest means so many different things to so many different people, but I think the thing that stands out the most for me